as it orbits Earth, which causes the portion we see illuminated to change. The moon takes 27.3 days to orbit Earth, but the lunar phase cycle is 29.5 days from the new moon to new moon. The moon spends the extra 2.2 days catching up because Earth travels about 45 million miles around the sun during the time the moon completes one orbit around Earth. At new moon phase, the moon is so close to the sun in the sky that none of the side facing Earth is illuminated. At first, the half-lit moon is highest in the sky at sunset, then sets about 6 hours later. At full moon, the moon is behind Earth in space with respect to the sun. As the sun sets, the moon rises with the side that faces Earth fully exposed to sunlight. The term lunar effect refers to real or imaginary correlations between specific stages of the roughly 29.5-day lunar cycle and behavior and psychological changes in living beings on Earth, including humans. In some cases, the purported effect may depend on external cues, such as the amount of moonlight. In other cases, such as the approximately monthly cycle of menstruation in the humans, the coincidence in timing reflects no known lunar influence. By the late 1980s, there were at least 40 published studies on the purported lunar-lunacy connection, and at least 20 published studies on the purported lunar birth rate connection. No correlation has been found between the lunar cycle and human biology or behavior. Doctors, nurses, teachers, policemen, and scientists have all laid claim to unexplainable occurrences, patterns linked to stages of the lunar cycle and life of Earth. The term lunatic comes from the Latin word luna, meaning moon. Moonstruck means to be dazed or to have or distracted with romantic sentiment, or mentally deranged or crazy. Studies have shown that people suffering with mental disorders generally exhibit periods of increased violence or aggressive episodes during the full moon. In particular, schizophrenic patients. Furthermore, in 2007, senior police officers in Brighton, UK, announced that they were planning to deploy more officers to counter trouble from drinkers in the city that they believe is linked to the lunar cycle. The research concluded that there was a rise in violent crime when the moon is full. Greek philosopher Aristotle and Roman historian Pliny the Elder suggested that the brain was the moistest organ in the body and thereby most susceptible to the pernicious influences of the moon, which triggers the tides. Belief in the lunar lunacy effect, or Transylvania effect as it is sometimes called, persisted in Europe through the Middle Ages, when humans were widely reputed to transmography into werewolves or vampires during a full moon. A survey revealed that 45% of college students believe moonstruck humans are prone to unusual behaviors, and other surveys suggest that mental health professionals may still be more likely than lay people to hold to this conviction. In 2007, several police departments in the UK even added officers on full moon nights in an effort to cope with presumed higher crime rates. If the lunar lunacy effect is merely an astronomical and psychological urban legend, why is it so widespread? Media coverage almost surely plays a role. Scores of Hollywood horror flicks portray full moon nights as peak nights of spooky occurrences, such as stabbings, shootings, and psychotic behaviors. Perhaps more important, research demonstrates that many people fall prey to a phenomenon termed illusory correlation, the perception of an association that does not in fact exist. Raisin and his colleagues terms a cultural fossil. Here are some further superstitions about the full moon. Number 1. Full moons make you crazy. Since ancient times, full moons have been associated with odd or insane behavior, including sleepwalking, suicide, illegal activity, fits of violence, and of course, transforming into werewolves. The words lunacy and lunatic come from the Roman goddess of the moon, Luna, who was said to ride her silver chariot across the dark sky each night. For thousands of years, doctors and mental health professionals believe in a strong connection between mania and the moon. Hippocrates wrote in 5th century BC that one who is seized with terror, fright, and madness during the night is being visited by the goddess of the moon. In the 18th century, England people on trial of murder and campaigned for a lighter sentence on grounds of lunacy if the crime occurred under a full moon. Aliens inhabit the moon. In the 1820s, the Bavarian astronomer Franz von Paula Grothiansen claimed to have glimpsed entire cities on the moon with his telescope. He wrote that the Lunarians who lived there had built sophisticated buildings, roads, and forts. Most of his colleagues scoffed at his assertion, but eventually got a lunar crater named after him. Sir William Herschel also thought aliens lived on the moon and made regular observations about the progress of their construction projects. The moon controls fertility. Perhaps because the menstrual and lunar cycles are similar in length, many early civilizations believed that the moon determined when women could become pregnant. This could explain why female moon deities, from the Chinese goddess Chang to Mama Kila of the Incas, figure so prominently in mythologies from around the world. In the 1950s, the Sikh doctor Eugene Jonas stumbled across an ancient Assyrian astrological text stating that women were fertile during certain phases of the moon. He based an entire family planning method on his hypothesis, telling his patients they ovulated when the moon was in the same position as when they were born. According to another theory, full moons cause an uptick in births, flooding maternity wards with mothers-to-be in labor. The moon is a hollow spacecraft. Several science fiction books of the early 20th century, including the H.G. Wells' The First Men in the Moon, take place within a hollow moon inhabited by aliens. In 1970, two Soviet scientists took this seemingly whimsical premise a step further, proposing that the moon is actually a shell-like alien spacecraft built by extraterrestrials with super technology and intelligence. We never really went to the moon. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, some people believe that the Apollo moon landings were faked by NASA, which used doctored photos, staged videos, and other plays to dupe the public. Proponents of these hoax claims argue that technology was not advanced enough for astronauts to reach the moon and return home safely. They also point to ostensible signs of studio trickery. The Nazis had a base on the moon. After World War II, rumors circulated that German astronauts had traveled to the moon and established a top-secret facility there. Some even speculated that Adolf Hitler faked his own death, fled to the planet, and lived out the rest of his days in an underground lunar hideout. A rabbit dwells on the moon. Intriguing legends from various traditions around the world, including Buddhism and Native American folklore, recount the tale of a rabbit that lives on the moon. Shortly before Apollo II landed on the moon in 1969, Mission Control in Houston jokingly referred to the Chinese version of the story, telling the spaceship's crew, among the large headlines concerning Apollo this morning, there's one asking that you watch for a lovely girl with a big rabbit. A Florida expert on animal behavior reports that hamsters spin in their wheels far more aggressively during the full moon phase. Deer and other herbivores in the wild tend to ovulate at the full moon. In Australia's Great Barrier Reef, the full moon is mating time for coral. A strange yet very true case of Charles Hughes, a London man who committed a series of crimes at the time of a full moon. There is a British legend that if Christmas fell on the day of a dark moon, the following year's harvest would be a bountiful one. Some parts of the British Isles believed that a waxing moon on Christmas meant a good crop the next fall, but a waning moon indicated a bad one would come. In some countries, a halo around the moon means bad weather is coming. From a folkloric standpoint, however, many traditions of weather magic indicate that a lunar halo, means rain, snow, or other foul atmospheric conditions are on the way. The first time you see a crescent moon for the month, take all your spare coins out of your pocket and put them in the other pocket. This ensures good luck for the upcoming month. Some people believe that the 5th day after a full moon is the perfect time to try to conceive a child. In some Chinese religions, offerings are made to ancestors on the night of a full moon. In some Native American legends, the moon is held captive by a hostile tribe. A pair of antelope hope to rescue the moon and take it to the village of a good tribe. But the coyote, the trickster, interferes. The antelope chase the coyote, who tosses the moon into a river each night, just out of reach of the antelope. The night of a full moon is believed to be a good time for divination and scrying. The lunar cycle has an impact on human reproduction, in particular fertility, menstruation, and birth rate. Admittance to hospitals and emergency units because of various causes, cardiovascular and acute coronary events, varicose hemorrhage, diarrhea, urinary retention, correlation with moon phases. In addition, other events associated with human behavior such as traffic accidents, crimes, and suicides appear to be influenced by the lunar cycle. However, a number of reports find no correlation between the lunar cycle and human reproduction and admittance to clinics and emergency units. Animal studies revealed that the lunar cycle may affect hormonal changes early in phylogenesis. In fish, the lunar cycle influences reproduction and involves the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis. In birds, the daily variations in melatonin and corticosterone disappear during full moon days. The lunar cycle also exerts effects on laboratory rats with regard to taste, sensitivity, and the ultrastructure of pineal gland cells. Cyclic variations related to the moon's phases in the magnitude to the hormonal immune response of mice to polyphenoformalin and sheep erythrics were also described. It is suggested that melatonin and endogenous steroids may mediate the cyclic alternations of psychological process. The release of neurohormones may be triggered by the electromagnetic radiation and or the gravitational pull of the moon.